Hello, brothers and sisters. I want to welcome you back to an all-new Sermons in the Park. I'm Reverend Jamie McCaskill. I feel so blessed that God has given me this opportunity to be here for you on another Sunday, the Sunday after the 4th of July of all days, and to have you, of course, join me here. Before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about, I seen a post on Facebook last night that, and I've seen it going around, making the circles, about Jesus and how it says that Jesus was not a white man. Of course, we all know that Jesus was from the Middle East. But this is one of those attacks on our religion that we as Christians should not bear. We shouldn't let these things influence us one way or the other. This is actually another way of trying to get us to turn on our own faith, and we should not allow these things to affect us. But it went on about all these different things, about how Jesus wasn't a white man, Jesus wasn't a Christian, Jesus wasn't this, Jesus wasn't that. All these little things. And it uses one of the things that has affected the church, especially with these modern times. And you hear me, as we've been going on about what we can learn from Elijah. And I talk about how Elijah was bold in speaking out and things like that. One of the things that it touched on, because like I said, these are things they use to affect the church. But like I was telling you with Elijah was not politically correct. And a lot of the church now, they preach against one aspect of what I'm going to mention, but they don't speak out against all the rest of it. Now, the Bible is very... just because Jesus the Bible does not address Jesus speaking out against such things, does not mean that Jesus wasn't against such things. In fact, when you read in, I believe it was Mark, and it's the original Mark, not the one that's in the Bible, because the Bible took things, and when they made the Bible, they condensed some stories down, and a lot of it, one of the things that Jesus mentioned was adultery. If you remember, and when Jesus spoke against adultery, the Bible just says, except for cases of adultery. But there was actually a word that came after that. It said adultery by, and then it was this word. And then, and the Greek word literally says adultery by sexual immorality. Now, sexual immorality is what the Bible preaches against. It is not homosexuality. A lot of people, they like going, Bible's against homosexuality. No, if you look, and what the Bible does is it says sexual immorality, and then it breaks it down. So that's adultery, that's homosexuality, that's bestiality, things like that. It actually mentions all these different aspects of homosexuality, which also of sexual immorality, which also includes sex before marriage. Sexual immorality is a wide range of things. A lot of preachers love preaching against homosexuality, but it's sexual immorality as a whole. Now, homosexuality as a whole, it's not the being in love with a person. It is having sex with said person. Sexual immorality is sex, period. That is not within a marriage in the form of having children. Any form of sex that is not for procreation is a sexual immorality. So just when you think about those things, and the reason I mention that is because this picture says Jesus was not a homophobe. Okay, so if we look at the way preachers preach, we should be preaching the way Jesus did. So if we're speaking against sexual immorality, and that includes sex with a person of the same sex as you, that would, in the politically correct climate, make you considered homophobic, because you're speaking out against a sin, which is what a preacher is supposed to preach against. So if I'm speaking out against sexual immorality and I have to mention everything that sexual immorality is, then you would consider me homophobic because I mentioned homosexuality. So therefore, if Jesus was speaking out against sexual immorality and he mentioned it, would that not also make you, in a politically correct climate, say Jesus was homophobic? But what I want you to bear in mind is a lot of times Jesus didn't mention things because the Jewish people at the time took the word of God and they made it a law. Therefore, when Jesus is saying follow the law, he's telling you that also because it would have been known at the time that this was a law. Now let's go with the race thing. People go, well, Jesus wasn't racist. Well, that is true. Jesus was not racist. Jesus lived in a time when that was not important, and it's still to this day. I even say it's not important. I don't see race as an important thing. I see the problem with people being racist a problem, but I don't see race as being an important thing. Just because you're black, white, green, gray, whatever color you are, I will be friends with you. I will welcome you in. I will help you. I will do anything for you. The moment you make race the issue, that's the issue. But racism is a problem, and it should be fought against, and it should be handled in a peaceful, loving way. Race is hate. We're supposed to love everyone. Jesus said love everyone. So therefore, when you're right, Jesus was not a racist, period. But that post really affected me, and I think that we as a church should point out the fact that, yeah, it's true. Jesus was not a white man. He was a Middle Eastern Jewish man. But I want you to notice something. Jesus was a Jewish man. A lot of the Muslims love going, well, Jesus would be a Muslim. No, he wouldn't. Jesus would not be a Muslim because the Muslims preach to kill people for being anything but Muslim, and Jesus would not be for that. The Muslim, the Blair book actually says, well, lie in wait for your enemy and kill them, but give them the opportunity to convert first. So, but anyway, I just wanted to touch on that meme. So when you see it, when you see these types of things, and this is just a way for the devil to attack our faith, we should fight against such things. So anyway, we're going to go back to what the topic of today's sermon. As you know, we've been looking into the life of Elijah and what we can learn from it for us to live a better life closer to God. So last week we left off where Elijah has called the fire down from heaven, and it's fallen and it's ignited the fire under the altar. This fire that, like I was telling you last week, Elijah has soaked this fire with water. He left no other option but for God to set it afire. And did this fire fall just anywhere? No, it didn't. It fell straight on the altar where Elijah on the altar that Elijah had repaired. Now, how many of you would love to see the fire of God in your life? Amen. We're pretty sure we all would. Now, let me ask you this: do you spend time with God every day? Have you built your altar? By that I mean, have you set aside a place in your life, a place in your home, where you can go and you can be alone and speak with God? So let us look. We're going to go back to the Bible. I want you to turn to 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 39, and we're going to read from there. And when the people saw it, they fell on their faces and they said, "The Lord, He is the God. The Lord, He is the God." Now, people are drawn to fire. The Bible calls God the consuming fire. Now, if we repair our altar like Elijah did, and we allow the Word to set us ablaze, The world will come running to see us burn. How many of you pray for revival? I'm pretty sure you go to a church. In that church, the people pray for revival all the time. They pray for it all the time. Well, let's look at this. If you would do what I just said, if you will repair that altar in your life, and you will allow the word to set you ablaze with holy fire like Elijah did, you will see it. You hear me all the time talk about, especially in my YouTube exclusive videos, how we as Christians have the authority given to us by God. Because God gave us authority. He made us the gods of this world. We can cause revival in our own lives simply by following that step. That step of repairing the altar in our lives, by setting aside a spot where we can go and we can be alone with God, and we can speak with God, and we can commune with Him. Like how I was telling you, I come to the park. So, when I come to the park the other day, and I walked over on the beach, on that bridge that's sitting right over there, and I looked out and I could see the ducks, and I could see the wonderful beauty of God's creation, the blue sky, the green grass, the trees, the birds, the squirrels. We need to set aside these places where we can go and we can be alone with God. And that's what we see here. We see this with Elijah, right? It's the first revival, a nationwide move of God that's recorded in the Bible. We see all the people following and praising God, saying that the Lord is God, the only God. We see Elijah turn the people back to God. And how? How did he do it? With the holy fire of God. Amen. We can do these things. We can do these things by just using our authority as Christians. Our authority given to us by God Himself. Given to us when Jesus died on that cross. When Jesus told His disciples, go and cast out demons and heal the sick. Amen. He told us to do that. He told all of you Christians to do that. You have that authority, and all you have to do is use it. We got to let the word move in us. We can do these types of miracles. We still have that authority given to us by God and Jesus. Let me tell you this. Jesus actually gave you an authority greater. All we got to do is regain our confidence. We got to let us look again at what Elijah did next. And this is important. Let's look at what Elijah did next. 1 Kings 18:40. Elijah said unto them, take the prophets of Baal. Let not one of them escape. And they took them. Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon, and he slew them. Man, that's Elijah killing 850 false prophets. Because remember, there were 450 for Baal, and there were 400 of the groves. Now I know, as a New Testament believer, God doesn't want us to kill. Not even teachers of false gods. But what we need to be adamant in our pursuit to eradicate all the roads the devil can use to get into our lives. We cannot doubt. We cannot compromise. These things lead us to disbelief, and they lead us to failure. Compromise and doubt, they lead us to failure. We need to fight, and we do not need to stop until we have destroyed our enemy. Because only then will we overcome our enemy. Now, who is our enemy? Is it other people? No. It's the devil. We should hate him and his works. We should cling tightly to the word. We should love that which is of God and despise that which is of the devil. Paul tells us in Romans 12:9, abhor that which is evil and cleave to that which is good. Now, evil and good are their opposites, right? Well, that's pretty obvious. We know that. We know that evil and good are complete opposites. But what you can't do is you cannot cleave to good and ignore the evil. Love the good, hate the evil. Love God, hate the devil. It's that simple. Ephesians 4:26-27 tells us, Let not the sun go down on your wrath, neither give place to the devil. Now, most of us think that means not to go to bed angry. My mother used to tell me that all the time. Don't go to bed when you're angry. Don't go to bed when you're angry. Yeah, that is important. That is very important. But that is not what this verse is talking about here. Now, what this verse is telling you to do is to be angry at the devil, but don't let that anger sleep. Keep it awake. If you feel it dozing, give it a shake. Wake your butt up. Get up. Be angry. Be angry at the devil. Don't put up with this stuff, man. If you don't have the godly anger for him, you give him a place. Now, God gave you the capacity for anger, right? We tend to aim it in the wrong direction. We tend to aim it at each other. We are meant to aim it at the devil. You start feeling tempted or whatever, and you go off somewhere and you be alone, and you give it to him. You tell him to get out of your life. You yell at him. You tear him up. You tear into him, man. Destroy your enemy. Don't chase him off. Now think about it this way. I did a sermon a while back on David, on how we can learn from David to be giant slayers, to kill the giants in our lives. Did David stop when Goliath fell? Did he? No, he didn't. He ran out and he cut his head off. Did Elijah stop after the fire fell and the revival started? No. No, he didn't. Like I said, David cut off the head of Goliath. Elijah, he slayed all those false prophets. He made it impossible for his enemy to come back. We need to make it impossible for our enemy to fight us again. That's what we read Elijah doing here. 1 Kings 18:41. And Elijah said unto Ahab, Get thee up, eat and drink, for there is the sound of abundance of rain. What do we read here? There's a sound of abundance of rain. Now, I want you to stop for a moment and think. There's been this huge drought throughout the land that's actually causing famine because there's no food for people to eat. And Elijah comes up, and it still hasn't rained all this time. And Elijah comes back and says, he does his challenge to the prophets, right? And he's called fire down from heaven. And not only did he wet the logs under his altar before the flames came down. They lit the fire. God lit it himself, and the altar's burning it's burning the offering to God. But the Bible doesn't say there's any signs of rain, but Elijah knew. He knew in his heart because he's seen the power of God, and he knew he said he originally told him, upon my word will the fire come back, will it rain. And Elijah says here, there's a sound of rain. At that moment, what he hears is he's hearing the sounds, but he's hearing it in his heart. It wasn't raining yet. But he saw it and he heard it. He heard it and saw it first, right? That's how our faith should be. We should feel that when we need it, we tell God and we know that we have it. That's what Jesus tells us later in the Bible to ask and believe and you will receive. That's exactly what's happening here. As Elijah has asked, he believes in his heart because he knows he needs it, that God's going to send it. Because Elijah has he's proven to the people that he is a prophet of God, and God does what he asks. We as Christians need to be that way. We need to know, and that's what I was telling you guys in my recent thing, the About Me video. We need to stop begging God, because the Bible tells us to ask and believe and we will receive. When we're begging, we're not believing. When we're begging, we're not believing. We need to know, we go to God and we say, God, I need a new job. I need it, and send me a new job. And then we need to believe it. Believe that we've got this new job, and guess what? We got it because we've asked God. And God, if God knows we need it and we asked for it, we'll get it. And I'm not telling you to go and ask for $1 million, because that's not going to happen. Because no one honestly needs $1 million. We might think we do, but no, we don't need it. Ask for the things you need. Believe you've got it, and you've got it. The life of Elijah shows us one thing: it's that God provides. Elijah needed a place to go. God gave him a place to go. Elijah was going to need food when he got there. God gave him food. The brook started drying up. God knew he needed it. He sent him to the widow. Every time Elijah needed something, Elijah knew God would give it to him. He got it. We need to believe. We need to know that we have God at our back. That when you do that, things will change for you. Believe me. I've seen it. So I want to thank you all for joining me here this week. I know this sermon's been a little shorter than usual. I know it started off a little bit differently, but I needed to get that out there because I saw it last night, and I knew I needed to say something about it. So I want to thank you all for joining me here. I love each and every one of you. Nothing but love for all of you. And I pray God blesses you and keeps you. And I hope to see you all here again next week for an all-new Sermons of the Park. We're going to continue our study on Elijah and how he is like us. How like we've been doing, things we can learn from Elijah that can make us better in our relationship with God. So I want to thank you all for joining me here. And once again, I invite you each and every Sunday about noon. I come out here as long as it's not raining or too cold. Because like I said, I have been out here with it freezing before. Got me a nice new jacket for that situation. So I invite you all to come out and join me here. And if not, like I said, you can always join me right here on Facebook for an all-new Sermons in the Park. And the YouTube video will be up in a little while. So thank you, and I love you. God bless you and keep you. See you here next week.